we're going to do things a little differently this morning, in that going to begin the sermon, the part of our service today, to a little bit of sharing. And so I'm going to invite you to stretch a little bit and briefly turn to a neighbor and share a high point in your week. Okay, did everyone get to share? Okay, now I'm going to ask you to stretch a little bit more. Stretch a little bit more, and briefly, it sounds like we've got the authentic part down. We want to do the briefly part too. And I want to invite you to share a low point in your week. Sure.
Is this week's time?
Yes.
Okay, last week,
Sit down now. Okay, all right. Does anyone want to really briefly, who had a really cool high point, want to really briefly share with all of us what it was? Anybody? Anne? Yeah. Treatment this week. Larry?
My 14-year-old son Logan scored 7 points in the volleyball tournament.
Who's willing to share their... Oh, go ahead, Nancy, since you stood up like that. Let that. Howard?
I would thank my sisters that helped me for 3 days make flowers for a wedding of my oldest grandson last night.
Awesome. Wonderful, Nancy. Who's willing to share a lighthearted low point? We only have so much time. Cindy?
I taped the wrong football game yesterday.
Didn't get to see the Buckeyes. At least you didn't have to see Notre Dame lose like a couple other low points this week. Okay, now one more time. I'm going to ask you to stretch, and I want you to share with your partner, a neighbor next to you, something you've never told anyone before. Okay, don't do it. Don't do it. I wanted to have a pause there to see if anyone would go for it. See, sharing is kind of a powerful tool, right? Was anyone going to share something they got? Sharing is a very powerful tool, right? But we don't want to use it all the time or to a level of intimacy, because sharing requires a certain environment and that a certain level of guidelines or principles are followed, right? I don't know about to you, but to me, sharing is a sacrament. It's a way in which I experience what is most divine about life in myself and in another person. It's funny today, it's kind of synchronistic, because how I came into this movement was through sharing. I got to be a part of a teen program, and all my teen leaders are here. There's Mary and Alan Feldman. They've known me since I was 13 years old, and then Claire and Charlie too. And what we would do is we'd sit in a circle and we'd share. Sometimes we were kind of dramatic. Sometimes we weren't making any sense. But there was something so powerful about being acknowledged There's something so powerful about speaking out loud when you don't think you have the answer, but then you reveal what it is. There's something about being able to clarify your thoughts, and even if you're on the wrong track, being validated for being on that wrong track, even in a certain way. There's something so powerful about being seen, so much so that I'd say when I've seen someone become really heard, I've seen them almost physiologically transform. Sharing can be that powerful a tool. And so it's why I wanted to talk a little bit about today, to share or not to share. Because there are elements involved in really listening and being an environment for someone to share with us, but there's also certain guidelines and boundaries that we should have on when it's best for us to share or open up. Not that we should be closed up little prunes all the time, but it's the idea we want to be personal, but we also want to take such good care of ourselves that when we really share, it's in an environment where listening is present, where it is safe and supportive, and where there's trust developed. When we have these things, we can amaze ourselves by revealing what is inside of us and amaze other people by beholding the truth of who they really are. Carl Rogers did something simple yet very profound. He said, what is most personal is most universal. To me, that says at the deepest level that that thing within you, which is most private and secret and perhaps sacred to you, is also what is true of the entire cosmos. That thing that perhaps you wait to share when things are most safe and most still and most quiet. Rogers elaborates, he says, what is most personal and unique in each one of us is probably the very element which would, if it were shared or expressed, speak most deeply to others. So it's often that thing that we're keeping a secret, that we're holding back, that we're over-filtering, that we're repressing, that we're hiding, that if we were to really express, we may find is the very gift that we have to share to those around us and to the world. Now, I know there are some people that we prefer have better filters, but don't we also appreciate those who are filterless, who are fooling themselves, who don't hold back? And a lot of them, what they do is they have certain tools that they use, certain guidelines that they follow. And the guidelines that we're talking about, because we only have so much time today, are listening, safe, supportive environment, and trust. Now, why is listening important to sharing? To sharing service? I want to hear from everybody. We'll start right there. Anybody, why is listening important?
You learn something from it.
Yeah, so we can learn from somebody. Exactly.
And being heard is the greatest gift you can
Being
be
heard
given.
is the greatest gift you can be given.
It brings us closer together.
It brings us closer, yes. And how do we listen? With attention, with our heart, yes. Without judgment, that's a huge one. We've got to be present to people. If I want to listen to you, I have to be present to you. I have to be not drifting off on the train of my own thoughts and willing to experience at some level the stream of your own consciousness without jumping in, hopefully, because there's wild things going on in those streams at times. But to be present to what someone's saying. And so that means that in order to really listen to someone, I have to be able to be present. That means for me in my life that sometimes I've had challenges being able to hear people and being able to say, you know what, I can't fully hear you right now. Can we talk later? I've shared here before about having a run-in with a gentleman at church several years ago and saying, hey, how you doing? And he looked at me and he said, I'm not telling you. His point was that he could clearly see I didn't have the time to hear all that he had to express. He was a little weird too, but perhaps you've had that experience on the phone, listening to someone you care about who's kind of venting and letting it all out, and you really care what they have to say, and they say, and then, and you can't hear a word of it, but what do you say? Uh-huh. Yeah. You don't say. So sometimes we trick ourselves in that, losing our own integrity, when it's really important to make sure when we're allowing or creating a space for someone to share that we can really listen to them. You may think it might hurt their feelings to say, hey, can we talk later? But in truth, it really allows, and maybe we have a great time later as well. In the same way, we need to watch out when we share that the person present to us is able to listen. We might want to start something off by saying, hey, can I have a minute of your time? Or, hey, can we connect? I have something that I want to share with you. Or I just want to have a conversation. A lot of us, it's perhaps the most important thing to do in our lives, but we kind of take it for granted. We might be embarrassed to say, hey, can we just have some time to talk? Every once in a while, my girlfriend says to me, how come you never share? And, as guys, we're very defensive when we take that. How come you never share? And the great thing being a guy, but also being a minister, is usually when I'm caught in something, I could also use my philosophy to walk and trick myself around it, and the other person too. It's a spiritual thing. The way I answered, in this instance, I was sharing what I was sharing, and I didn't realize it was actually true because I shared it. And the truth is my girlfriend's an amazing sharer. And it's so much so that she can share anywhere at any time. She can share while watching a television show, while eating a meal, before going to bed at night, right when she wakes up in the morning, at any time. And it's a wonderful thing. It is a very good thing. But I realized that for myself, I need more time. I really need a safe space. I almost need that time dedicated, an hour or two, just doing an activity where there's no interruptions or anything, to really want to open up and share. It's just the way that I am. And not everyone needs to be that way, but it's important, I think, for each and every one of ourselves to ask, what do I need to be more intimate and vulnerable with my partner, or with my parents, or with anyone who's really important? What we should not allow ourselves to get away with is this idea that I really don't have anything to say. A lot of us, we don't think we have something to share or express, but perhaps we're wrong. Maybe if we had just created ourselves a little bit more intimate of an environment, made sure the listening was a little bit more present, if we were willing to trust a little bit further, what we really had to share, what was hidden even from our own selves, would come forward in a powerful way. I remember being in a relationship for about 6 months, and we went out, had dinner together 3 times, and didn't say a word. You ever have that happen even with someone you love? You seemingly run out of stuff to talk about. And of course we weren't talking to each other, but I know that we both realized or thought to ourselves, we're complete. We've said all there is to be said. So eventually something happened that we caused to happen, and she went her way, I went my way. But looking back now, I realize if I was just willing to share a little bit deeper, perhaps that judgment I was in, or we could have created just a little bit more of a safe and supportive environment for each other, wanting the best for one another, that the words would have come out, that flow would have been reestablished. And perhaps you're in one of those relationships right now where the words don't seem to be present. But it's not about the words. It's not about finding the stream of thoughts. It's about creating that space to share or not to share. What does it mean to be in a safe and supportive environment, or to be that for somebody? Can we be a safe place for somebody? Maybe. Yes. Well, what does it mean? How do we do that for somebody? We listen, but non-judging was what I heard from Leanne. That's important. What? Anything else? Trust. Yes.
Not giving advice.
Ah, that's really important, Betty. That's really important. It's so often when I'm sharing, I don't want you to see me as you think I ought to be, but I want you to see me as who I am, or at least who I can be. I don't want you to tell me what you think I ought to do, or even perhaps what you did in the same circumstance sometimes, but I want you to validate and recognize me where I am, even if I'm in a challenging place. I want you to be able to see that perhaps I have the wisdom to figure it out, and that by listening that will come forth, that you don't need to direct me. You don't need to guide me. And in that validation, there comes a trust, right? This third element that's so important. Trust to me is a very slippery thing. And I think that's because trust has been challenging for me at times in my life. But if I've learned anything about trust, it's that I can't fake it. I can't fake trust with somebody. I can fake love. I can fake and pretend to be happy. I can even fake authenticity. To think about that. But I can't fake trust, because I know if that trust isn't there, then I'm really just not going to be able to open up. I'm not going to be able to be authentic. I've never been able to make myself share in a real way to someone I didn't trust. It just has never happened. Maybe I wish I could. Maybe some of you are better at it than me. I've often said to myself, Josh, you don't have to trust people. Just trust the process. Just trust God. And that works really well until I'm in an opportunity to share. Then it doesn't work so well if I want someone to share with me. It's very important that that trust is built up. And if it's not there, and if there's a problem or a seeming issue in my relationship, trust is always the first place to go. I realize that sometimes trust is why so many of us love our pets so much. Because we can find that we love them, we can find and create safety and trust with them better than others. I don't read the Science of Mind magazine enough, but I was very grateful to open it up and see this great column called Murphy's Dogma that came out in last month's issue. And it's an advice column written by a dog. It's through the Reverend Bob Lucan, and he talks about Murphy's Dogma, and people write Murphy's letters, and he writes them back. I don't know how he does it, but he does. So the question posed to Murphy goes like this: I can't believe I am writing to a dog for advice. On the other hand, I trust dogs more than many people. Here is my question. My boyfriend recently told me he needs more space. He says he loves me, but feels that more time away from me will strengthen our relationship. Should I be worried? What does he really mean? And Murphy replies, I love space. The more, the better. When my person puts me outside, there is always more space inside. What is true is that he no longer wants to share his space with me. People don't always say what they want. A person may want to be in relationship and also want to be alone. Here are a few questions that may be helpful. Do you require the person you love to be on a leash? Do they require you on a leash? If so, has this become limiting? Is your expectation collar too tight? Are you both able to be your authentic selves while in a relationship? If life was a morning walk, would you both go in the same direction? Do you walk well together, or are you battling for control? Do you hold each other in high regard, or do you find yourself wishing the world would change? Is how you are different bring value to the relationship or friction? Are you sharing an extraordinary journey, physically, mentally, and spiritually, or are you cellmates? Yeah, powerful words from Murphy the dog. He's very cute if you want to come up here and look at his picture. But building that supportive relationship and that trust relationship is so important, to be able to sit down and say, no matter what is going on, I know that this person deep down wants my highest good. I know deep down they would never intentionally hurt me. That builds this trust so that we can really connect with each other in more profound ways. Part of being able to trust is being able to use these guidelines that I'm sharing with ourselves. Am I listening to myself? Am I supportive of myself? Sherry Huber said something to the extent of, if someone else talked to you the way that you talk to yourself, you would have nothing to do with yourself. Right? Are you trusting yourself? That's how we sometimes take away that negative filter. When we're able to engage these things, we're able to create healthy boundaries for ourselves. Boundaries not being walls to keep people out, but guidelines for how people are allowed to be in our intimate space. If they break the rule, it doesn't mean we kick them out. It just means that the space disappears, right? Because that trust, that listening, that environment for deepening isn't there. Ultimately, it is my belief, since I think sharing is a sacrament, that we should approach our most intimate relationships like we would approach our relationship with the divine. Just like we would any spiritual practice. With reverence, with awe, with deep listening, with an intense honoring, with openness, with gratitude, with praise. When we can approach the people we love from this place, it is so much easier to deepen and play those heart chords. It is my belief about relationships, my sacred belief about them, it's a bit of a myth, but I still claim it is true, is when I'm really wanting to understand at a deeper level a quality in my life, someone, it comes forth from life with that quality in a way that I can learn to embody and embrace. I love something that Emerson once said. He said, "My friends have come to me unsought. The great God gave them to me. By oldest right, by the divine affinity of virtue with itself, I find them, or rather not I, but the deity in me and in them. Both deride and cancel the thick walls of individual character, religion, age, sex, and circumstance at which he usually connives, and now makes many one." So just in a prayerful closing today, if you'd like to take a deep breath with me, I just simply invite us to open up to deeper sharing within ourselves, to think, what is that quality? What is it about me that perhaps I may have been holding back that desires greater expression? What can I do for myself, and what can I request in my relationships to allow that to take place? Where are the boundaries for myself and my own consciousness in which I allow myself to share or not share? And how can I build trust to establish those boundaries? Perhaps I'm even in a relationship with someone that is no longer with us on this planet anymore, yet still those boundaries are still required. For no relationship truly ends in the sacrament of life. Let us honor our relationships, let us deepen in ourselves so that we may deepen our relationship with others and that divine most high being at the center of who we are. And so it is. Amen. So thanks for your time, everyone, this morning. It's great to see you.